do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning, and welcome to the April the 20th edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show, also called the CRCS. And we thank you for tuning in, calling in, and listening. Today's show with Mr. Fuller, who is live on the line from Washington, D.C., is going to focus in on this particular question. What does your question have to do with solving the race problem? The overall goal is to train us to be focused in on what we have to do. Last week's question was the 4 wants, and Mr. Fuller went into great detail and ad nauseum about what do you want to do. Page 171 in the revised code gives the examples of the 4 wants, but all that is designed to have us to and train us to be focused in on what we must do. Now, if you would like to join the conversation today, you can simply dial 516-453-9921. And if you have a question or comment, then be sure to press the number 1 button. Keep in mind, we want you to be focused in on what does your question have to do with solving the race problem. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And if I have time, I will read it. If I do not read it on today's program, which I don't think I will have the opportunity to, but if I don't, I will at some point read it, and then I will inform you of when your Gmail is read and give you the date and time. Remember, you want to stay focused. Also, the chat room is open, and we do thank you for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boy, it's really getting crowded in there. And grand rising to all of the people that are in the G room, in the chat room. All righty, we thank you for that. Okay, so remember, when you call in, try to make sure, ma'am, sir, that your question focuses in on what does your question have to do with solving the race problem. We want to bring our focus right in on that so that we don't get distracted by the many things that are out there. Thank you to Moon Pie, who's checking us out and making sure that we're okay, and Robert's always on the control. All the books are in. Mr. Fuller will discuss that and a lot of other materials that you can get by going to producejustice.com. That will be later on in the hour, and he may refer to that several times during these 2 hours. Okay, let's kick the show off by going to Gmail. This is from Miss Anonymous. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Yes, sir. Okay, going to the Gmails. This is from Miss Anonymous saying this. And I guess I'm going to put these together here. It says, why are most black people in the southern states in the United States are living in a mobile home, double-wide trailer, an old cabin, or in Section 8 apartments? And with that, why do they think it's absolutely the perfect way that they are living instead of trying to educate themselves or their relatives not to repeat that same cycle over and over again? Mr. Fuller?
Well, anything that black people do on the planet, anywhere, under the system of white supremacy, is a reaction to the system of white supremacy itself. And the best way to answer that question is to go to each individual person, or a sampling of people, at least, and ask them why they are in the circumstances that they're in, and see what they say. And that's the best way to get a straight answer. If people are in trailers, well, you ask them why they are not in what you might call a stick-built house, a brick house on a boulevard somewhere, and not in a trailer. And whatever answers they give should be valid answers. But according to compensatory counter-racist logic, anytime black people are doing anything, whether you're talking about where they reside as a place of residence, or whether they're on a boat, or whether they are out somewhere having a beach party, it's because the white supremacists put them in position where they could be doing that, or allow them to do it, if it's something they desire to do. And any circumstances you see them in, as far as a roof over their heads, trailer, or a tent down by the riverside, or up under an elevated track, it's because that's a reaction to the system of white supremacy, and the white supremacists said this is where you will be, either directly or indirectly, because we're all prisoners of war. So in the circumstances you see black people in, you can look at it as, well, this is a POW camp, what we call black neighborhoods, POW camps, prisoner of war. Why? Because black people are prisoners of war. What war? The war between those who believe in the system of white supremacy and those who don't. And black people were taken prisoners, all of them who are on the planet now, every black person who's on the planet now, anywhere, is a prisoner of war, because the white supremacists, by being supreme, took over the affairs of all black people everywhere as prisoners of war in the war that they made some time ago, that started whenever the system of white supremacy started. And they became the supreme creatures on the planet in the affairs of people who are called or classified as black by them and are non-white. So direct answer to the question, wherever you see black people, whatever you see black people doing, that's a reaction to the system of white supremacy, because that's the only motivating factor among black people that exists that carries any credibility.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And this one here, question to Mr. Fuller. This is a black male that's unemployed, doesn't own a vehicle nor a home. He's a felony due to him supposedly for selling the illegal drugs in the past, and he has no driver's license. Don't like to keep a job, but has a cell phone. His age is around the 30s, 40s range. However, he had got a black college female pregnant. After the baby was born, he denies that the baby is his child and still never took a blood test. Now, a year later, during income tax season and stimulus checks are being given out, he wants to move in with her to help take care of the baby and still never took a blood test to see that he's really the father of the baby. Mr. Fuller, what do you think about this situation, signed anonymous?
This is a situation that's designed deliberately by the system of white supremacy. Anything you see black people doing, regardless of what it is directly, indirectly controlled by those white people who believe in maintaining the system of white supremacy. There's enough of everything on this planet to fulfill the desires of each individual 20 times over as far as material things are concerned. Food, shelter, boarded up buildings all over the world. And people are lying in alleys under cardboard boxes. That's right in your face. That doesn't have to exist for anybody, but it does everywhere. There's food being dumped in the dumpsters and dumped in the ocean and dumped just anywhere. I mean, you can find desert land to dump stuff. Fresh food that hadn't been touched, well-prepared food that just came out of the ground, just dumped. Food after fancy parties, caterers and whatnot, looking at food that's left over that people didn't even touch at some wedding. You put all that food together, you could feed everybody. Just the food that's thrown away, so I have been told. I didn't, I'm not surmising this. People have made studies and written books and articles about tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of waste. And you find things, including not only food, but furniture, building materials that are thrown away. And somewhere in the same city or town where people are throwing things away, somebody, some black person, is trying to steal just a little bit of one of those things. Trying to steal a lamp from a furniture company, from a lamp store. And then 4 miles away, unbeknownst to the person who's doing that stealing, there are piles and piles and piles and piles of lamps that are being put, people are moving and throwing stuff away like you wouldn't believe. Very expensive stuff. Sometimes just saying, and this is mostly white people, I just don't want it anymore. Tired of looking at it. And some black person, a half a mile away, is crawling around on their hands and knees in a warehouse trying to steal one of them when there are 40 of them just a half a mile away being thrown away. People who have been around dump yards and all like that, and people who do dumps, like black people in the waste material business, or they have jobs where they collect garbage and whatnot, they can tell you about things like that. They can tell you some of the things that they see being thrown away, brand new mattresses and whatnot, because somebody just bought the mattress yesterday and tried it out and decided the next day that they liked another mattress. So they took that brand new mattress and without even opening it, just threw it out there on the trash pile. And then there's somebody who was doing 20 years in the lockup for stealing a mattress that didn't have half the value as the one that's thrown away. Just a few blocks from them. That's the kind of world that the white supremacists have set up. And it's just taken for granted that, hey, it'll be like this forever. But black people suffer from things that can be easily corrected. because the white supremacists enjoy seeing people suffer. That's a part of their enjoyment. That's a part of their status. What the great unwashed, the wretched of the earth, are doing while they're playing golf. That's the white supremacist mentality.
Would that be under fun, glory, and material satisfaction, or whatever?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. And the glory comes from how are the black people doing today? Well, they're out there under the tents and, stealing from each other and killing each other like they usually do. Oh, boy. That makes my golf swing much better.
Wow.
That's how they think.
Yes, sir.
They were raised to think that way. It's called glory. One of the three things that everybody wants: fun, glory, and material comfort. Racism gives, unfortunately, all too many white people the glory that they seek here on this planet.
Okay.
More than anything else.
Okay. 516-453-9921 is the number you call to get in contact with the show, and you can listen on that line. You can also ask a question, and I would ask ma'am, I would ask sir, that when you get that number that you give the call screener your name so that I can properly introduce you, which I'm getting ready to do here. Just keep in mind, last week Mr. Fuller talked about the 4 wants. We're trying to keep focus here. And then this week, when you ask your question, what does your question have to do with solving racism, white supremacy? I'm told I am to go to Gregory from West Palm Beach, so let me see if I can get you in here. You got a break. Go ahead, Gregory. You're on it. You can be heard. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, brothers. My question for Neely Fuller Jr. today would be, what would be the codified response for the Darren Chauvin case right now, and no matter what the results are?
Codified response for what?
For the Chauvin case right now that's going on, George Floyd case.
Oh, the codified response is to keep trying to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. See, that's just a symptom. All of these shootings are just symptoms. Like everything you see happening that shouldn't be happening are symptoms of white supremacy. Why? Because they're the most powerful. They're the smartest, most powerful people on the planet. So anything that's happening that shouldn't happen, it's their fault. They're to blame. They're running all of black people's business. Black people don't have any business of any kind, nowhere on the planet. The white supremacists say what we'll do and what won't be doing, who we'll kill and who we won't kill, whether or not we will eat and what we'll eat on any given day, what waters you can travel on, what sky you can go through. The white supremacists say, hey, you're violating my airspace. What is that plane that I gave you because you don't make none? None of you black people make anything but babies and trouble. So when you fly through my airspace, what are you doing in my airspace? I told you this is restricted airspace. You said, well, I got to get from point A to point B. Well, you're going to get on the ground. That's what you're going to get. And then you're going to get under the ground after I put you on the ground in that airplane that I gave you. But you wouldn't have 5 cents worth of sense of any kind, not even to be able to learn how to fly a kite if it wasn't for me, with your dumb selves. Get on the ground, Negro. And then after you get on the ground, I might put my knee on it, violating my airspace, violating my air, taking air that I let you have, I let you breathe, You breathe because I let you breathe, Negro. So don't get in my face with anything about what you know about anything, because you're the dumbest creature that ever hit the face of this earth. You and all your little children and all your grandpappers. That's how I took you over. Now bend over and let me kick you again. That's the white supremacists. They don't say that nowadays, for the most part. They use a refined method. In fact, they'll get right out there and march right alongside of you. But that's mostly to keep an eye on you. Because when it comes to negotiating time, well, I don't negotiate with you people. You don't have anything to negotiate with. But I'll just pamper you because you're nothing but a child. In answer to the question, that's it. So we just keep plugging away to replace the system of white supremacy with what? With a system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated nowhere on the planet, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That should be the goal. Nothing less than that. Anything that's even talked about less than that won't do. That's the reaction. That's what the reaction should be.
All righty. Let's go to, we got Everett coming up, Marquis, and from California, and Stan from Philly. But right now, we're going to go to the 832, and that's going to be Everett. Good morning, Everett. You're on with Mr. Fuller, and you can be heard. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning,
Good
Mr.
morning,
Fuller.
sir.
Good morning,
yes, sir. Just to piggyback on what the first guy said about the question, in the case of Derek Chauvin, if he's found not guilty, will it be codified for people of color to start marching all over the world?
If they choose to do so, but they shouldn't burn and loot. Now, that's two things they shouldn't do. All of those things that are burned and all of those things that are looted, the things that are looted are not going to go very far. And it does something to you when you get an attitude of anything you want, you got to steal it or take it by force, because that spills over in the areas where black people are. You get in the habit of doing that, and then you don't want to do anything else because you think it's easy. And in a short period of time, it is. But black people are going to get out of this thing of taking things away from people, because when we're among ourselves and there are only things to take from other black people, that's what we'll continue to do. And that's what we have been doing. That's how we've been making it. That's how we look forward to making it. Robbing and stealing, burglarizing other black people in the prison system called the system of white supremacy. So we don't want to burn, we don't want to loot. We can demonstrate, and should, if that's what we choose to do. Those that don't choose to do that and do other things, they can do those things. But you should always have in mind one thing. You're trying to replace the entire system of white supremacy with, in capital letters, the system of justice, something that's never been done by anybody. And what is justice? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. Number one. Number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Nobody mistreated in any of those areas. And everybody who needs constructive help in any one or more of those areas always gets it. That's the goal. It's never been seriously tried. Talked about forever by just about everybody. Everybody talks a justice game. But justice means, by definition, compensatory definition, the one that I made up, guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated. I don't know of no situation like that, nowhere on the planet, where somebody is not being mistreated. And the other is everybody getting the help that they need that is of constructive value? Everybody? Well, if everybody's not getting it, you don't have justice. Martin Luther King said, I don't know what his definition of justice might have been, but he paraphrased and he said, justice denied any place is denied every place.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have justice unless it includes everybody. There's no such thing as throwaway people. The white supremacists believe that you should have a system of throwaway people. The throwing away people is fun. That's a part of their fun. That's a part of their glory. That's how they get a lot of their material things. We want to do away with that system because of that. There's no such thing as throwaway people.
Okay. All right. Strangers are not welcome here, so Everett, don't be a stranger, but I don't really have to tell you that. Very good. Very good. Let's do this here. We're focusing in today on when you ask your question today to Mr. Fuller. Think about it now before you ask him. What does your question that you're going to ask have to do with solving racism, white supremacy? What we're trying to do here is to keep focus on what we need to do, which is producing justice. Oh, there are so many distractions out here. We don't want to do that. We don't want to get distracted, in other words. Let me do this. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with this show, just call this number, 516-453-9921. Be sure to depress the number 1 button so you can get in line for your question or your VGQ. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and it might get read today, but when it does, I will inform you of that. The chat room is now open, and let me say this to the chat room people, very intelligent people there. They are not taking the bait, and I'm very proud of you, because remember, whatever you write in that is also going to be forever. But you are intelligent enough to avoid certain things, and I just want to point that out to you. But thank you for your comments in the chat room. Okay, now let me see if we can get back to the show. And we will. Let's see here. I think on my list, going out to Cali. Boy, it's early in the morning out there, Marcus. Is it Marquis or Marcus? But anyway, here we go. You are on with Mr. Fuller, and you can be heard. What is your question? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. It's Marquise, by the way. The S.
Okay,
the S
Marquise.
is pronounced.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. My question for today is, in regards to, I have a tweet screenshotted that I was kind of seriously thinking about. But the question is, what privileges do black males have in these quote-unquote United States of America? I asked that because that was a question posed by someone else on the internet, and the response was, privilege is intersectional, meaning there's layers to it. A black man has less privilege than a white man because he's black, but still has more privilege than a white woman because he's a man. An example of this is that black men receive the right to vote before black women and white women. So my question is, what privileges do black males have in this system, and is it okay, or how do we correct the spreading of misinformation through someone's VGQ?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
The privileges that black males have, because what we call black men, we're really not men. We're boys. They call us boys, but not so much in the modern days, but that's our status. Once you become a prisoner of war, you're in a childlike position. So we are basically children, male and female. All black people are. So we function as children. And we're given, if you're talking about privilege, we're given the prison privileges that prisoners of war get. And what those privileges are, they may vary from time to time, place to place, person to person, depending on what the prison masters want. Racist man and racist woman, they are the prison masters in a system of white supremacy. And white supremacy is a prison system. That's the best way to explain it to people when you're talking about it in a way that they can grasp, what is this system of white supremacy? Well, if you think about a prison system, a world prison system, and think that all black people are prisoners, POWs, veterans of a war in captivity to an illegitimate government, which is the system of white supremacy. Not America, not Europe, not Russia or England or something like that. That's not the way to talk about it according to the code. It's always the system of white supremacy. There's no such thing as American racism. That's a contradiction. Racism stands alone. And we have to wrap our minds around that. I've been trying to do that for years. I've been trying to say, don't mix up racism with any so-called nation or nationality, as we have been taught in school. The white supremacists encourage that because that's a trap. And it's false. It's impossible for an American to be a racist. That can't be done. Why? Because Americans don't exist. You can't have Americans and white supremacy in the same planet at the same time, because Americans are people that practice justice. That's what an American is. That's what an African is. An African is a person that practices justice. That's the definition of an African. You know, what type of food they eat and what type of, what they do each and every day and what type of transportation they use. Say that's African transportation. No. An African, by definition, is a person that practices justice. An Asian is the same thing. I call it the 3 A's: American, African, Asian. They have nothing to do with practicing non-justice. So these people don't exist. Americans don't exist, Africans don't exist, and Asians don't exist. According to who? Neely Fuller talking this crazy talk? No. According to logic. Why? Because what is an American, what is an African, and what is an Asian? They are people who practice justice. And nobody can practice justice in the system of white supremacy, because the system of white supremacy is the only government on the planet that's worth being called a government. So it's pure logic. This is mathematical logic. And everybody should start saying it like that. You know, I'm not saying, hey, you talking about I'm anti-American? I mean, no, absolutely not. I'm trying to be an American. I'm trying to be an African. I'm trying to be an Asian. Why? Because and Asian and African and American are people who practice justice. That's what I'm trying to be, a person that practices justice and a person who is in a justice system. There's no justice system nowhere on this planet simply because white supremacy is supreme on the planet Earth. And the system of white supremacy is dedicated to non-justice, dedicated to mistreating people, dedicated to guarantee that people who need help the most are not going to get it. That's what it's dedicated to do. That's what it was invented for fun, glory, and material comfort for people classified as white. And people who are non-white are nothing. And that's the dominant government on the planet, which means there is no other government on the planet worthy of being called government. I hope I didn't deviate from the question, but I still want to get that in.
Okay.
And if I deviated from the question, the caller can follow it up and ask and say whether or not the question was answered.
Wait a minute, see if I can.
Is he still on the line?
No, he's still on. Go ahead, my brother, if you needed to add to that, or did Mr. Fuller say? I'm sorry, go ahead.
The last question that I had was, if someone has a VGQ and the information in that VGQ is proven to be invalid or incorrect, does that one still fall under VGQ, and how do we correct that information that the person is putting out within their VGQ without argumentation?
Yes, now I understand that part of the question. That was the second part of the question. If a person makes a false statement, what's the antidote to a false statement?
True.
A true statement. That's all. And if the person says, "Are you disagreeing with me?" you say, "No, I'm just saying what is true. I'm not disagreeing with anybody. I'm just disagreeing with something that's said that's false, but I'm just speaking under BGQ. I'm speaking what I know to be the truth, or what I think is the truth, and the other person can speak what they think is the truth. The person who is saying something false might think that they're telling the truth, but you don't argue with the person. If someone else asks you, see, that's to keep black people. That was invented. I had to invent that to keep black people from going at each other. One black person at a meeting stands up and says something that's absolutely false, and the person sitting next to him knows that it's false. But you just go quiet. Because if it's false, the person, if you start saying that, "Hey, man, you telling a lie. You lying, man." Now what you're going to get is conflict, which is exactly what you don't want. You don't want that. So the way to avoid that, you say, "Well, he said what he said." That's all you say. He said what he said. Now, if the person who is monitoring the meeting, they'll say, "Okay, well, what do you have to say on the subject?" Then you stand up and say what you have to say about the subject that they're talking about. And, and what you're saying is something you know is true, when you know that what the other person said is false, but you don't get into an argument with them about it. You just stand up and say what is true. And now the person might say, "Hey, man, that contradicts what I just said. Are you challenging me?" And your answer is no. No, sir. I'm just saying that the car that's parked down on the corner now is a green car. And that's the only car down there that's green on that corner. Because that car is mine. And I just parked it. And I know my car. So I'm saying the car that's parked down on the corner on the parking lot right now is a green car, not a blue one. Well, I said it was a blue one. Sir, I'm not disagreeing with what you said. I'm just saying that the car that is parked down there in that spot, number 52, is a green car. It is my car, and I know my car. That's all I'm saying, sir. See, in other words, you just, regardless of what anybody else is saying, you don't agree or disagree. You just stand up and tell the truth if you know what it is. That's it.
All righty. Thank you, my brother from California. And you don't have to be a stranger. That's what I usually tell people, particularly if it's the first time I've heard you. Okay, before we go to break, we're going to go way over to Philly. We're going to get Stan in here. And Stan, you're going to ask your question. And again, keep it in mind, the theme for the day is, what does your question have to do with solving the race problem or racism, white supremacy? So let's go to the 404. And let's get Stan in here. Stan, good morning. You're on with Mr. Fuller, and you can be heard. Go ahead, my brother.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. I just wanted to, Mr. Fuller, he said twice already today about how the system of white supremacy is designed to keep, black people in a bad situation, and it's for enjoyment and all. It was a film that came out, a documentary, that talked about, not specifically that, but it supported what he said, and it was called Cooked, Death by Zip Code, and how, about every 10 years you have like a heat wave that comes through the United States, and particularly in Chicago, you have a large number of black people that will die. And she did research and was trying to understand, like, why does this happen and how it can be prevented. And she even went so far as to talk to the military and the National Guard about preventing this. And she was very surprised when she found out that they basically told her, we're not a proactive force, we're reactive. So, we'll come in there and help you clean up the bodies, but we won't come in there and help you prevent that from happening. So I just wanted to agree with Mr. Fuller and what he was saying about that. But the question that I had was a basic question. It was a question that I had about white people. And that is, when I found myself in like job situations or out in society, sometimes attention being focused on myself. Do white people have the ability, let's say if you have like 100 black men in a room or something, are they able to tell which males that they need to be concerned about? Like, these ones here are very serious. We got to keep an eye on them. And my question is just that simple, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
The white supremacists are the masters of reading people, you might say, of figuring people out. And that's the answer. Nobody does it better than them. They watch people. They watch, their slaves. You can't make slaves out of people without knowing something about the way that they think and what they value, what they'll laugh at, what makes them mad, what makes them happy, how they enjoy themselves, what to give them to make them enjoy themselves, how to talk to them, how not to talk to them. So the white supremacists, when they move among non-white people, first thing they do, they don't go in there with a whole lot of talking themselves. They study. The white supremacists, the highly skilled ones, they come in quietly. That's the refined races. Now, the unrefined, they just kick the door in, and come in shooting, okay? But the refined races, the ones who are really the masters, the multiple ones, the ones that guide the wild ones and keep them in check, by the way, they usually come in quietly. And they study everything that a black person does. What makes them laugh, what makes them cry, what makes them, want to have fun, things that they do to have fun. They study every detail before they open their mouths. And then once they start talking, they got you already figured out. And they haven't said nothing about themselves. So you don't know anything about them, but they know everything about you. Because right today, black people have a tendency to sit up there running their mouths to show how much we know and how, and what we do and blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, we're real good at that. The white supremacists sit back and take it all in. So when they get up from the table, they know more about you than you'll ever know about them. And when people have that type of advantage, they can conquer you. The white supremacists understand that principle. It's called, in the spy world, intelligence. Intelligence agencies, you have them, sometimes called central intelligence agencies. Centralized intelligence. Take in all of the intelligence of the entire world. How do you get intelligence? By studying people, by studying the things around people, by studying what people do, studying all their customs. And only let them know about you the things that will make you more powerful. So let them know what your weaknesses are.
Wow. I want to say that's heavy, Mr. Fuller. Wow. Thank you, Stan, from Philly. Don't be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, I think you're exactly correct. They do study you. I never thought about it like that. Central intelligence, even if they have to infiltrate your group to get information.
Do that from day one. The minute black people get a group, they've been infiltrated. White supremacists laugh at groups. That's why the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept is not a group. You try to make a group out of it, you have already shot yourself in the foot. It's a concept. It floats around in the air. It's like a counter-virus, all right? It's not a virus because the white supremacist system is a virus. Counter-racism is a counter-virus against viruses, but it works in the same principle as the virus. You can't pin it down. See, if they ask Neely Fuller, you talk about this counter-racist concept. Are you a counter-racist? The answer is no. And the evidence shows it. You can't haul me nowhere into no court and accuse me of counter-racism. Why? I haven't countered racism, that's why. Say, well, you talk about it. Well, yeah, lots of people talk about a lot of things. But what have I done to counter racism? Where's the evidence? Racism's still here. When Neely Fuller counters racism, racism will not exist. Not guilty. Not guilty of counter racism. Not that that's anything to be ashamed of or to dodge. Say, well, you're trying to be a counter racist, you better believe I am. Yeah, guilty is charged on that one. Absolutely. But, well, what group do you belong to? I belong to a group of prisoners under the system of white supremacy. I'm a victim of white supremacy. I put it on the cover of my book. That's all that I am. And on the back of the book, that's how I identify myself. I've never been anything other than a victim of white supremacy. That's my title. There's never been a minute when that wasn't my title. And that's the only title that I have that counts. Victim of white supremacy. That's what Neely Fuller is. Now, what else am I other than that? Question. That's how you present it.
That's how you present it. Okay, so then
that's how you present yourself.
then why are they so against you with the publication that, since we're talking about this, that you have the book, the code book? Why are they so against that? Like that,
the white
that you can get from going to producejustice.com.
Why are they against it?
Yes, sir.
I haven't heard a white supremacist say, or a white person, it hasn't come to my attention, say that they're against my book.
What have you heard the white people say concerning your book?
Nothing. And that's what, and some black people have told me that what they know is that the reason they don't talk about it because they don't want to call attention to it. And that's the conclusion I came to. They somebody who they are not concerned about, you don't hear nothing about them. I mean, you hear everything about them. Correction. That's something I noticed. In fact, if you start hearing the white supremacists saying, read Neely Fuller's book, and he said this and he said that, that means that they have, and I'm nervous now, because they have figured out what to do about a book like Neely Fuller's. And Neely Fuller himself. But they ignore me. That's the only conclusion I have to come to. I've made talks and travel down through the years. The white people have been in the audience. They have never made a challenge to anything that I've said. Except one time in New York City, 2 white men ran down the aisle while I was
getting ready to mention that, yes.
Yes, and they said, you are homophobic. And I said, well, come down, come forward, sir, come forward. But they ran out. As soon as they shouted it, they ran out of the place. They ran back up the aisle. They ran down the aisle, shouted, you are homophobic. And then when I beckoned them to come forward and take the mic and make their case, because that's what I was doing, because that's what the code says I'm supposed to do. Anytime somebody calls you a name, have them come forward and make the case. That's the codified way. You don't start telling them, you don't know what you're talking about, and I don't listen to you, and I don't want this audience to listen to you. No, come down and make your case. If Neely Fuller is homophobic or whatever else you want to call him, come down and make your case before everybody. And Neely Fuller will own up to it if you're telling the truth.
Okay.
But they ran out of the place, so I didn't get a chance to, to do anything. I mean, I wanted them to make the case. They're calling me a name. The code says anytime somebody calls you a name, have them make their case. Just follow it up. Oh, that's what you're calling me? Okay. Maybe I am that. So just explain it. Explain what you mean by what you call me.
All right. Now, since we're talking about this book, and there are many people that come on and that are new to the program each week, first of all, how can we get the book, and what is contained in the book that people, want to know what you're speaking about?
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what is in the book is a textbook workbook for thinking, speaking, and or acting. Either one of those things or all three. Thinking, speaking, what to say, what not to say, and acting, what to do, what not to do. Because what is thinking? Thinking is what thoughts to think about a particular subject. And usually it has to do with some action that you're going to take as a result of your thinking. And your thinking will lead to action, which has to be or should be or will be in one of two categories. Something constructive, your action is going to be constructive or non-constructive. It's going to be solving a problem or making a problem. So the textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy is for solving the race problem, and for the individual person to do it on a daily basis by what you think, what you say and don't say, and what you do and don't do. And that's how the book is structured. That's the intent of the publication of the book by me. And it applies to all areas of activity, because if you leave any area of activity out, that's the one that's going to come back to haunt you. Because the white supremacists are very thorough. They just don't think about economics without thinking about education. They don't think about education or act on education without thinking about religion. They don't do anything in religion without thinking about sex. They don't do anything in sex without thinking about politics, and on and on and on, because all areas of activity are interrelated. So the white supremacists are very thorough in whatever they do. They cover everything, and they depend on non-white people to just to cover a few things here and a few things there, and nothing is coordinated. The white supremacists coordinate every move that they make so that they cover all bases at all times. They know how to take all sides of every argument with great skill without you knowing that that's what they're doing. You're not being aware of it. But they are masters of words. So what the counter-racist code is about for victims of white supremacy is how to see through all of that and what to do about it. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Okay. There's also a word guide there. That's a part of that process.
All righty, we're coming up on, we got about 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in this first hour. So anything that you would like to discuss for the next minute or so, Mr. Fuller, before we have to change over to the second hour?
No, nothing in particular.
Okay.
Except I heard an expression some time ago, there's no crying in baseball. Have you heard that expression?
No, what was that again? There's no what?
There's
crying?
no crying in baseball.
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay, there's an expression. I think it's in a movie that starred Tom Hanks. That's where I saw it. There's no crying in baseball. So I kind of piggybacked off of that, so that I was in line with the code, showing my sources. But I modified it, saying no, there's no crying in counter-racism.
Uh-huh. No, I haven't heard that.
Because racism is a business, so we should be very businesslike in countering racism. And crying is not a part of it, even though the things that are happening in racism will make us cry.
Yeah.
But we got to start thinking about what to do about it and stop just crying about it.
Stop just crying about it. Okay. We're going to leave that one right there. You have been listening to the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show, also called the CRCS, here on ProduceJustice.com and also on BlogTalk.com. We'd like to thank you for listening. Hope you will tune in again next week. But for those who are staying, guess what? We got a surprise for you. We have another hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Neely Fuller Jr. and your co-host, Mr. Bobby, which will commence in 10 seconds. Thank you for listening. All righty. Welcome back to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We thank you that you called in. We thank you for listening. The chat room is open, and also the Gmails, which you can do that by doing this. The numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. Please do not write me a novel, ma'am, sir. Just make it brief, concise, so that I can read it for airways. And if you'd like to get in contact with the show, just simply call this number, 516-516-453-9921. When you do that, ma'am, when you do that, sir, please give the call screener your name, because if you don't, then you may, I won't overlook you, but anyway, just give the call screener your name, and we can get you on here. When you ask your question, first of all, you can be heard, so you don't have to ask, can I be heard? But ask your question, but don't make it long. Make it concise, so that Mr. Fuller can precisely answer your question. Please don't give a speech either, unless you're going to do a VGQ, and then we want that to be concise so that we can hear what you are trying to say. Okay. All right, so the chat room is open, and I'm going to read some of the Gmails, but before I do that, I am going to go way down to the great city of Nashville and the 615, and that's going to be Anthony. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller, sir?
All right, good morning, gentlemen. Now, first I got a VGQ and a question, but I'm going to go with the VGQ first, and it's going to be short. So, in my opinion, the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott proved to be successful, in which I feel struck a blow to white supremacy, and at least the white supremacists took heed to it and made a change in the Montgomery, Alabama busing system. That's my VGQ. And my question is, could a possible boycott of a non-productive white supremacist materialistic product potentially hurt the system of white supremacy based off of the historical evidence?
If it does, there's an old saying, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. In other words, everything in counter-racist science is about what works. If it has a constructive result, that's code. That's what you call counter-racist science. That's counter-racist codification. A code means having something. When you have a code, it means that when you follow that code, it works. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify for the title of code. Every time you do it, it works. Or you do it this certain way. I mean, you might modify this and modify that, like you do anything that, according to circumstances. You have to take that into consideration. What is the context? Sometimes something that works in one place won't work in another, but you always go with what works. That's counter-racist science, and that's code. If it works, do it. If it doesn't work, avoid it like a plague. Avoid it like a virus. Don't ever do anything that proves not to work. Something that black people are kind of notorious for in a lot of ways each and every day. We are wedded. We'll say, well, that's what we've been doing, well, the white supremacists don't operate like that. They do what works. If it works, they'll do it in their behalf. The minute they find out something doesn't work in their behalf, they drop it like a hot potato, like a hot iron. They are very scientific. That's why they're the most successful people on the planet. But a lot of people talk about their traditions. That's the way we do in the hood. That's why the hood is the hood, a place where nobody wants to be. All of the hoods, all over the world, wherever you find black people, they're trying to get away, straight out of Compton, straight out of Brooklyn, straight out of Yemen, straight out of Nigeria, straight out of wherever. Straight out of it? You're going straight out of it? Where are you going? Well, there's something that I say on the air here all the time. Where are you going? I'm black. Where am I going? To get away from these other black people. Well, why do you want to get away from these other black people? Because I just can't stay here. Because they're killing me. I'm going to get killed around other black people. Well, where are you going where you're not going to get killed? Well, I don't know where that is, but I know that when I get hungry, where I got to go, I can't go and ask no black people for nothing because they ain't got nothing. So when my children get hungry, I'm going to get on that boat and get on the Mediterranean Sea, and I'm going where? Where the white folks are. Which way did the white folks go? That's something to be echoed about among black people everywhere in the world. Neely Fuller, I know about that. Where you going? Where you going, Fuller? Where you going? You leaving here? And I say, yeah. Well, what are you leaving here for? I'm going to try to get a job. Well, get a job where? Where they got jobs. Well, where is that? Up north. Well, what's up north that ain't here? Jobs. Well, who got the jobs up there? You know somebody up there? No. But you going? Yeah. Well, why are you going up north? Well, I heard that that's where the jobs are. What jobs? Jobs that white folks got. White folks ain't got no jobs for you here? No. That's why I'm leaving. But I heard they got some up there. In other words, you're going where the white folks are. That is nothing new. That's always been as far as I can remember. Yes, people with dark skin, I'm trying to get where the white folks are. Well, white people will mistreat you. Well, they mistreating me here because they saw to it that I ain't got nothing here. They made a mess of everything here where I am. Got us fighting each other, killing each other. Ain't none of us got nothing. So I'm going where they are, and maybe if I can hide in their basement, I can get a little bit of something. Well, you're going to get some torture, too, in their basement. Well, I can't survive here. So all over the world here in 2021, black people reluctantly are saying one thing in one voice. Which way did the white folks go?
Okay.
So things will be a little bit better than how the white folks made it where I am. Because I'm in the prison yard. Maybe if I can get up there in the warden's office, things will be a little bit better. And anybody that knows anything about a prison knows that. The closer you get to the warden's office, the better things get. On a plantation, the closer you get to the big house, the better things get. And when you get in the big house, you get a little better quality of food. You might get a little bit more rest when master ain't checking on you. But out there in that field, you're catching it 24/7, along with the whip.
Okay. All right, Anthony. Don't be a stranger down there in the Ville. Mr. Fuller, let's go to a Gmail. This comes from Black Speak. It says the critical race theory. It says, Mr. Bobby, could you ask Mr. Fuller what is his opinion of critical race theory being taught in public schools? As background on critical race theory, I am including this definition of critical race theory. Critical race theory is an academic movement made up of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who speak to critically examine the law as it intersects with issues of race and to challenge mainstream liberal approaches to radical justice, or racial justice, excuse me.
And so the question was, what is my definition for it?
Yes.
I don't have a definition for it because I've heard of it. I've heard of several terms that have come up recently. And I don't know what any of these terms mean, but the code says whomever coins the term, whomever comes up with a new term, that person should define what the term means. I invent terms, but I define what those terms mean. Why? Because I invented the term. I should define it. I should have a definition for any words that I use. So I don't have a definition for critical race theory because I didn't coin that term. I didn't invent that term. I have a definition for justice. I didn't invent the word justice, but I invented a definition for the word, which is in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. But anybody who uses a term should be able to define it. And the caller just defined the term critical race theory according to him, which is what he's supposed to do when he uses the term, if he's going to use it. I'm not going to use the term because I don't think I need it.
Okay.
But what I have is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, which is the basic title of my book. And I have that, and I can explain what that means. But that's explained in the book.
Yeah, yes, it is. Okay. All right, Black Speak. Thank you for your Gmail. Brother Muko's listening and working with that care unit. Thank you, Brother Muko, for listening. Before we go on, Mr. Fuller, another question from Fareed Muhammad. He says this, good day, Brother Bobby. Ask Mr. Fuller if he hasn't already, would he meet with current President Joseph Biden on the topic of white supremacy? Thank you.
If I haven't already met
says,
with...
ask Mr. Fuller if he hasn't already, would he meet with current President Joseph Biden on the topic of white supremacy?
Oh, no. I would just have President Joe Biden. Now, if he requested me to do that, I might. I mean, I may. I don't know. I wouldn't expect that to ever happen. But if anything, if he had time, he could read my book. But I don't think it's necessary for President Joe Biden to read Neely Fuller's book. I don't think it's necessary for any white person anywhere to read Neely Fuller's book because it's a counter-racist code. And white people know about race more about racism than Neely Fuller will ever know. White people are not ignorant about racism. They couldn't practice something that they don't know anything about. So white people know everything that there is to know about racism that Neely Fuller is trying to learn in the system of white supremacy. Everything that they need to know. Now you might say, well, what about a 13-year-old white boy? I mean, who, acts silly all the time and just want to be a comedian or something. What does he know about racism? Does he know everything about racism? I say he knows everything that he needs to know. And the things that he needs to know is that the things that he doesn't know, he can find out from other white people because he's white. See, that's a whole lot of things that go to being white, where you don't have to make much effort to get much of anything that you really need. So when a white person needs to know something, including President Biden, about anything that has to do with the domination of black people by white supremacists on planet Earth, he has that information immediately at his disposal. He doesn't, I mean, why talk to an ignorant person like Neely Fuller when he's got millions of white people who can tell him everything that he needs to know that's worth knowing about being white and what that means?
Okay. Let's see here. 516-453-9921 is the number you call to have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Fuller. Be sure to give the call screener your name so that I can properly introduce you, if I can properly pronounce your name. That's one of the mistakes that I make weekly that I am trying to correct. That is name correcting, among other things. But I've never done a perfect show and never will do a perfect show, but we're putting forth a try. We want to keep in mind that our topic today, focusing in on what Mr. Fuller talked about last week, which was the 4 wants, is when you ask your question, what does your question have to do with solving racism, white supremacy? T.I., I'm going to get to you. The brother from California, I'm not even going to try to mess up your name. Stan, looks like I might get you again, and there's somebody in the 315, which I don't have your name, but before I go there, this question has just come up from Frank E., Mr. Fuller. He says, Mr. Fuller, if the white supremacists have their hand in everything, how is it only black people are running so many storefront churches, and will Western religion, in particular Christianity, help the black man's quest?
Well, when I talk about religion, the seventh area of activity in the textbook, I always say, try to confine your discussion to just 3 questions and 3 answers to those questions. And that is, what is the name of your religion? That's whether you're talking to a white person or a non-white person. Number 1, what is the name of your religion? Number 2, what does your religion require you to do in all 9 areas of activity? Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, other people's religions, sex, and war. Because most religions have requirements. Number 3, last question, what does your religion require you to do when you interact with me? Now, those 3 questions are in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. That's to keep them getting into religious arguments. So in answer to the question, you just try to confine your discussion of religion, when you talk about religion with anybody, to just those 3 questions, each individual person. And you don't mention anything about what religion it is. Let the person tell you. And then ask the person, what does their religion require them to do? And basically, most important, that 3rd question, what does it require them to do when they interact with you in all of these areas of activity? And then you react according to the code, my recommendation, from whatever they tell you that their religion requires them to do in those 9 areas of activity. And that's the best way to handle. I've thought about it down through the years. And I'll watch people have religious arguments and religious discussions and go on and on and on. And I saw that I came to the conclusion that it's just best not to get into the details of anybody's religion other than just finding out how they're going to interact with you according to their religion. Because that's the reason they have one. Religions are something that people have, where they're going to presumably interact with other people, unless someone tells you, my religion doesn't have anything to do with people. I mean, so, I'm not, you a person, so I ain't going to tell you nothing about my religion because it don't have nothing to do with you because you're a person. And my religion don't have nothing to do with people. Well, I don't know of any religion that doesn't have something to do with people. So if you are that person and somebody's presenting you with their religion, the main thing you want to know is how does the person who has that religion going to relate to you in all of those 9 areas of activity. And that's the only thing you should be interested in when it comes to somebody else's religion. Just ask them. Don't argue. Just ask questions. Stay in the question lane. You move outside the question lane, you're getting into the argument lane now. Mm-hmm. That's what I have observed. It's going to be an argument, and you don't need an argument about religion, because you don't need an argument about anything. Black people should be tired of arguments of any kind with anybody. So the way to avoid a religious argument, and that's one of the easiest arguments to get into, is a religious argument. Stick to those 3 questions, and they'll take you right where you need to be.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for answering that question. We got 6 things that we need to do here. Try to do them in this order. T.I., I got you coming up. Whoever's in California, I'm going to mess your name up, so I just said California. Stan, looks like we got you again. Haru, looks like you're in the game. Divitude, we might get to you, and we definitely have to get to Mr. Fuller about the book, which will probably be the last thing that we do. Remember, if you do have a question, when you call in, press the number 1 button and give your name so the call screener can put it up on the screen for me so I can read it, if I can read it, but sometimes I can't. But this one I can. T.I. from the 704 in North Carolina. Let me see if I can get you there. Okay, you're on and you can be heard. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Well, first of all, little clarification. It's not T.I. from Atlanta, but it's T.X. who just happens to be in Chicago right now. T.X.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, and good morning, Mr. Bobby.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
You had mentioned, Mr. Fuller, you had mentioned a situation that happened when you were speaking, and some people in the audience kind of wanted to challenge you. And it made me think about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who I'm in her hometown as I speak, Chicago. And I wanted to know, since you all have spoken together in similar forums, can you cite for our audience situations where you can talk about how she handled people who questioned or challenged her? Any situation that come to mind where you could see that she handled it masterfully, and perhaps our listeners may benefit from that knowledge. Thank you.
Your question is how Dr. Welsing handles situations?
Correct. Because what she was sharing was kind of foreign to a lot of people, and they probably took opposition to it. But yet she was just so on point, as you are, in explaining racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works.
And you want to know how did Dr. Welsing do that? I'm trying to get.
There were situations where you two were in the same room together,
and we were talking to an audience. Correct. Usually, Dr. Welsing made her presentation to the audience, and then I would make mine. We were not a team.
Understood.
A lot of people see us that way, but Dr. Welsing had her views, and I would present mine. Now, a lot of them were similar, naturally, because she said she got most of what she would present to audiences from me. That's what she said. Most of the time she was here on the planet, because she said, her idea for even talking about racism in the context that I do it came from me. She tells the audiences that. But now, when I have seen her make presentations, and I've seen her make many presentations, because I've been right there on the podium with her, she just made her presentation. And people didn't say anything, for the best of my recollection. It's the same way with the audiences that I had. Most of the people just listened. Very few people would ask questions. That's been my experience. I've made many talks to audiences, and very few people ask questions. Very few. And the same thing, if I recall correctly, I noticed when Dr. Welsing would make presentations, very few people made comments, very few people asked questions. Even though we would have questions and answers, the way I recall it, I think I answered more questions than Dr. Welsing, because when I was present, very few people would ask Dr. Welsing questions. Dr. Welsing had a very measured way of talking, in such a way that people would comprehend what she's saying the first time around. She was much better at that than I am. I have a tendency to ramble, and that should be pointed out too. I'll get away from the central question, so people always ask me more questions, as I recall, than they did Dr. Welsing. She was usually very, very structured in her presentation. I have a tendency to be all over the place when I'm talking about something, because there's so many things going on in my mind at the same time. And so I may come across as incoherent or non-focused. In fact, I grade myself each week in making a presentation on the air, like right now. Not on so much what I said, the substance matter. I grade myself on focus and clarity, because that's something I don't have a tendency to do, is be very focused and very clear in my own opinion. That's in self-evaluation. Out of 4 stars, I never give myself more than 2.5. I've never done that on focus and clarity, because I don't think I'm very focused, and I don't think I'm very clear most of the time.
All righty. Well, clearly we have to take a station break. Thank you, my brother from, you say you're in Chicago now, but thank you for your call. Everybody else, guess what? You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, our number is 516-453-9921. If you have a question, ma'am or sir, please depress the number 1 button and you will get in line. Keep in mind that there are callers before you, so keep that in mind here, so that you understand what's going on here. Okay, Gmail, you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, and I can't guarantee that your Gmail will be read today, but at some point in time it will be read, as I have done with others on today's program, which is my usual pattern. Try to get them in and get Mr. Fuller to answer your concern. I would ask that you not write me a novel, though. Please be concise and clear, because I'm already going to mess it up, not on purpose, but I may not say it the way that you would like for it to be said. So please try to be clear so I can try to be clear. Chat room is open and active, so you're able to go there and read any information you want from there. So we thank you all for your participation. So let's get started with the last 29 minutes. Now, brother, sister, I'm going to say brother, I'm going to try to click you in. I'm not even going to call your name because I know I'm going to jack it up, but you're in the 760 area code. You are on with Mr. Fuller, and you can be heard. Good morning. Go ahead, sir. Or ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Good morning,
sir.
Mr. Bobby.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
So my question is, I'm asking a question from the code book, the 2016 Revised Expanded Edition. I'm on page 200 in Area 6, People Relations. My question is regarding VGQ. So in the code book, it says, since no white person is or can be a victim of white supremacy, no white person is correctly qualified to say anything in regards to race, racism, and or counter-racism that a non-white person is duty-bound to believe. So my question was, as a victim of racism, white supremacy, what are we duty-bound to believe?
Whatever is true. You believe what's true, whether you like that truth or not. That's a sign of growth. That's a sign of maturity. That's a sign of being what? A problem solver. You always face the truth. The truth about black people, the truth about white people, the truth about anybody. Truth is that which is. That's the definition of truth according to the code. That which is. We use an expression, a slang expression called tell it like it is. And so you tell it exactly like it is. Call it exactly what it is. Call things exactly by what those things are. Reveal truth, because that's the only way to ultimately solve problems. If you're going on something that's not true, you're not going to solve a problem. That's a problem right out of the gate, because you're believing something that's not true. And when it comes to actually telling truth, you may not tell the truth under duress. You'll tell a falsehood, but one thing you should never do is tell yourself something that's not true and you know it's not true. In other words, start believing a lie, and you know it's a lie, but you'll believe that it's the truth. You force yourself to believe it because that's your comfort zone. No one should ever do that. That's suicidal. Lying to yourself. You might be forced to lie to somebody else at gunpoint or under duress. But when you start lying to yourself, you're through booking. The code says that's one thing you never, ever do. But when you're talking about counter-racism, you always seek the truth about everything. And a lot of things in counter-racist science hurt black people because it's true. But you tell it in such a way that it has a constructive result. Whatever it is, anytime you tell the truth, always keep in mind you're looking for a constructive result. You may know the truth, but you don't always have to tell the truth. But you don't tell a falsehood. You just don't tell the truth. You just don't say nothing at all. All right? Now, when you say nothing at all, that's not telling the truth. But that's not lying either. You just didn't say nothing.
Well, let me interject.
You open your mouth to reveal truth. When you open your mouth to tell anything, tell it in such a way that you're revealing truth, and tell it in such a way that you're revealing it in such a way that it has a constructive result.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Fuller, right here. I heard back in 1973, a guy told me, he said, although it is not always wise to tell the truth, but don't lie. Is that the same thing you just said?
I think it's the same thing. I can't say what the other person said. He said what he said. That comes under VGQ. But in evaluating it, just on the surface of what you just told me, it sounds like it's basically the same thing that I said.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to know. I can't ask him because I think Eddie's dead now. But all right. All right. Thank you, my brother from California. Don't be a stranger here. Let's move up here. Let's go to the 315. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. Let's go to the 404. I think this is Stan. Okay, Stan.
Yes.
Good morning, and you can be heard. You're on with Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir. Good morning again. I just, Mr. Fuller, you said something earlier about the lack of interest in your book and the lack of promotion. And I've read, it was many years ago, even before I learned about your literature, was, excuse me, a book called Black Robes, White Justice, written by Bruce Wright. He was a former New York State Supreme Court Justice. And I was trying to learn about law. I guess I was trying to piece things together before I discovered a book like yours. And then and it was a very good book about racism within the criminal justice system. And then he wrote an additional book called Black Justice in a White World, which was his autobiography. And he said something very similar to what you said about your book. He said that his book was never mentioned in the New York Times. And you would think that if a Supreme Court justice wrote a book, that people would focus on that and what he had to say. But he said he was very surprised that it was no mention of his book at all. So I just wanted to mention that in regards to what you said about your book, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All righty. Thank you there, Stan. Excuse me. Yeah, thank you there, Stan. Let's go to Haru, I believe in the 315. And you are on with Mr. Fuller, and you can be heard. What is your question?
Hey, how you doing? Good morning, fellas. Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, yes. My name is Haru Tut. Yes, my name is Haru Tut out of New York. This is my first time calling. I just wanted to put that out there. Also, I just wanted to say I first came into awareness of Mr. Fuller in 2016 when I read Dr. Cress's Welsing book, The ISIS Papers, and that's when I became aware of who Mr. Fuller was in his book. But my question is that because I'm a very angry and frustrated black man on the planet. I'm very angry and frustrated because, as far as I can see, we black people seem to be powerless over this global white supremacy system on the planet. And my question is to Mr. Fuller is that with everything that we know about white supremacy now, because it's not like black people don't know what's going on. We know what's going on from listening and studying people like Mr. Fuller and Dr. Cress Welsing and a lot of others that's been out there way long ago teaching us about what's going on in our positions, right? So my question is that since we know what's going on the planet as black people, right, why are we so afraid to do anything about it? Because in my opinion, black people on the planet as a whole seem to be scared of this global white supremacy system to do anything about it. Because black people, because in my opinion, you have black people on the planet that don't want to do anything because they got a good job, they got a house, they got a car, they got money, so they're comfortable in this system where they don't want to do anything against white supremacy, even though they know that on a global level, black people's issues have been stemmed from white supremacy. To the point where you got Africa, the richest continent on earth, but they're still poor. So my question is, Mr. Fuller, to make this thing short, because I can go on, because like I said, I'm an angry, frustrated black man, right? My question for you is that Why are we so scared to fight back against white supremacy, knowing what's going on in the world? Why? Why? Because this has been going on for millennia, and we still don't want to do anything. All we do is post stuff on Facebook, get on social media, and say this and say that, but we don't do nothing against white folks. We act passively against them. We smile on their faces and stuff like that. We pretty much kiss their butts. And what I'm trying to figure out to this day, why are we still doing? Are we that powerless over these people where we can't fight back? Period.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
That's why I wrote the book, is to make us aware enough in a different way from what we have been aware that we are being manipulated, and basically we are being manipulated to do the thing that we are doing, and that is, what is it that black people do more than anything? What is the priority? It's not so much that black people are afraid to fight racism, to try to eliminate racism and replace it with justice. It's that we have another priority. See, people act according to the way that the things that they think are really important. Now, right now, a lot of black people think that racism is important, and some things are getting done. Every time we think that racism is important, we get some things done. Not nearly enough. Nowhere close to being enough. But we get a few small things done when we take an interest in making racism a priority. But we have a short attention span because we have a greater priority. In answer to your question, why is it that black people haven't solved this problem? It's because we haven't really put our minds to solving the problem. We have our minds somewhere else. Where is that somewhere else? That's the question. Showing off to each other. That's where our minds are. And you mentioned some of the things, but we all do that, either directly or indirectly. And the code book has 4 show-offisms. It's listed in the book. My mind is getting less and less sharp, so I have the 4 show-offisms in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. I can't tell you exactly what page they are, but it's 4 things that black people do showing off. When we wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, if you really tell the truth about where black people's minds are all over the world, what do they think about? See, everything starts with the mind. What do you think about more than anything? Showing off to other black people. Form of showing off. That's what the hairdos are for. We're not hairdoing and nail polishing for white people. We are showing off to other black people, and we don't get any return for what we're showing off for. So we're coming up empty all the way, because it's like a bunch of prisoners milling around in a prison yard showing off the latest ankle bracelets and handcuffs that have been put on us. That's what we do. That's what we do all over the world as black people. You go anywhere in the world, you find black people, once they get a little bit of food in their stomach and just a little bit of rest from all that hard work we have to do, the only thing we have in mind the minute we get what we call free time is showing off to other black people. We are hell-bent to do that. Even if the showing off this takes the form of driving down the street, shooting into a crowd. That's a form of showing off. That's all that is. You see that MF fall? Yeah, I shot him. I think I saw 3 of them drop. That's a form of showing off. That's all. It's not good for anything else. And as long as black people have the mentality, and answer to this very important question, so you won't be frustrated. We got to get out of this business of showing off, period, because we don't have anything to show off with. It's not nothing that you can point to that black people do that's of any constructive value that you say is worthy of showing off. That the white supremacists are not already doing a whole bunch of. Flip that channel and see, hey, we're talking about Mars. Now compare that to a black person showing off his new set of wheels on that car he got, that he's going to be owing for and trying to pay for the rest of his existence. That Lamborghini. Yeah, man. I finally got one. I had to work hard 50 years to do it, but here I am. Get in, man. I'll take you for a spin. The white supremacists are landing on Mars, on Jupiter. Try that for showing off. See, we got to get out of show-off business to us, because that's all we show off to. We know we can't show off to white folks, because everything that we have that we're showing off, we got it from them. And that includes our knowledge, showing off how much we know. Man, you don't know nothing. You know, young blood, you don't know nothing. You ain't been nowhere. I've been all over the world. All over the world doing what, Negro? Trying to show off. It ain't got nothing to show. So you've seen this, you've done that, and you draw a line on it and add it up. Everything you've ever done don't amount to nothing. Compared to what? Compared to the white supremacists on their day off.
All righty.
So the main question you're asking, why are we the way that we are? They trained us to be this way, but we got to stop showing off anything, hairdos and everything else. Forget about that. Nobody cares that counts. The people that count don't care, and the people that care don't count. Everything that black people do, and get into the business of counter-racism. That's what counts.
All right. Thank you, my brother from New York. Appreciate it. Don't be a stranger. Let's go to Terry in the 202. You're on with Mr. Fuller. You can be heard. What is your question?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, both of you, for everything. I would just like to make one quick contribution, and it's about a change in my behavior. And I think that this contribution fits under the area of economics. And what happened, I just decided I was only going to buy new food. I'm like, I'm not buying anything else new. I don't need anything else new unless something breaks or needs to be repaired, like a car repair. And so, I really did an acute change in my purchasing habits. And unbeknownst to me, in my, I had gotten on the internet, just to check my bank from time to time, where they have a new app, a new application that is just there. And so I clicked on it and, what's going on here? What is that? And it made a observation about my spending habits. I didn't ask it to do this. This is some of this new artificial intelligence that they have. And it said, well, you have a marked decrease in this. You're no longer buying household products, or whatever it is. Like going to Lowe's and things like that. But my heart skipped a beat. I'm being observed, even though if it's not a human hand doing it, it's a computer robot doing it. So now, what does this mean? This means that it can affect the brother made earlier about the boycotting and things like that. You better believe it affects their bottom line, okay, because they could take it down to the dollar with me. So if all of the people want to really think seriously and deep thought about it, then go ahead and withdraw your money And you'll see people begging, like they did during the Montgomery bus boycott, when our people stayed off of those buses for 381 days, where people just showed each other around in their cars. Well, we may not have to do it that way, but for certain, we can just withdraw to the point where it's obvious, and it will be obvious in no matter of time. So that's the contribution that I wanted to make, and I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That would be under
I would like to stay on and listen.
Okay. All right, you got you. That would be under VGQ. Let me see if I can get you to do that. Okay, that would be under VGQ. By the way, speaking about VGQ, there's a new news channel on. I don't know what city that you are listening in, but it's called the BIN, the Black Information Network. Very good information that you can get off of that. It's called the Black Information Network. I don't know what city it's in. I believe some of it is on the Internet, but why don't you check that out and see what you can glean off of that. Okay, we're going to keep Terry on, and let's go to Swa out in Cali. Go ahead, Swa, you're on with Mr. Fuller.
Greetings, Mr. Fuller. Greetings, Mr. Bobby. My question is, should we still be asking white people what they fear the most as a way to get to solve the race problem, Mr. Neely Fuller?
Yes, sir. People do act according to their fears. So when you're talking to white people, rather than getting into shouting matches, get into problem solving. And how do you solve problems? By asking questions. All problems are solved through questions and answers. So what are the questions that you ask white people? You ask white people what they like and what they don't like. And specifically, and be ready for it too. Be ready for them to be honest about it. What they like about black people, because black people are always saying white folks don't like us. Well, what's to like? We need to ask that question of ourselves. What is it about black people to like? If you're just going to say, I'm going to hunt down some black people and see what I like, what is it about us that's so special that someone would be hunting us down to like? I'm looking for something to like. What is it about us to like? I can't answer that question myself. So if I'm presenting myself to white people of the world saying, you don't like me, what is it to like? So we ask white people, is there anything about me that you like or should like? And why? Why should you like whatever it is that you like about me? And you can ask the same thing of black people about white people. That's how you get what? The one thing that we need a whole lot of, understanding, and have white people be honest. You show white people your new hairdo and ask them, do they like it? Do that. You're the one that went and got it. So what is the hairdo for? Evidently, you want somebody to like it. Otherwise, why would you go and get one? Get something that you know somebody don't like. Unless you want to get something that somebody don't like. All right? And you make that very clear. I got this hairdo because I knew you wouldn't like it when you saw it. And since you don't like my hairdo, you don't like me. And I want you to not like me because I want to get it on with you in a hostile manner. And you get it on with me. I'm looking for a fight. That's what this is about. I mean, just be honest about what we do. And you should have a reason for every move that you make, including getting the hairdo. What is your reason for getting it? And tell yourself the truth. See, black people have a way of lying to ourselves like we wouldn't believe. Or sometimes we just don't, we're like robots, which is what the white supremacists have made us, try to make us robots, people that don't think about anything. Just
yes,
do.
Sir.
Just do. But in answer to your question, in talking to white people, find out what they like about black people and what they don't like, and then examine everything that they said.
Okay.
And see if it's something that should be true or shouldn't be true. And if it's something that should be true, keep it. But if it's something that shouldn't be true, get rid of it. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, Swah. Let's go to Buffalo real quick. Buffalo. I believe it's AX. That's what they have on the screen. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller. You can be heard. Good morning.
Thank you. I'll be quick. A VGQ just really quickly. John Henry Clark said we can't even make a safety pin. So what is there to show off about when black people can't even manufacture a safety pin? The question is the news and media and other outlets have a heavy focus on race and white supremacy, and a commentator on a news network even said the other day, he said that white people won't learn until they feel the same pain as black people. So the question is this a good thing that race is a big focus right now? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Race should be the focus of everybody on the planet, every minute of the day. Black people particularly should wake up in the morning and go to bed at night thinking about racism. That should be our focus. We're in a war, a world war that's been going on before we were born. And we act like we're on some type of cruise. And that is our big mistake. Black people, every black person, should wake up in the morning and go to bed at night with one thing in mind: replacing the system of white supremacy with a system of justice and establishing beyond that something called universal man and universal woman. 1, 2, 3. Those three actions. Our entire existence should be focused on that. And we will become, overnight, a people who are what you might call, quote, unquote, for the first time, progressive.
Okay. Got to leave it there, Mr. Fuller, but this is what I'm going to do, and thank you. We got exactly 2 minutes. So, Mr. Fuller, these 2 minutes or a minute and a half belong to you and your book. Have at it.
Yes, go and to cover all the things that we've been talking about, or at least tap into them deeply. Go to producejustice.com and order the textbook for victims of white supremacy. That's my first recommendation. I mean, as an opening. And then go from there, like I said in the statements before then, about making racism the priority of your entire existence, replacing it with a system of justice. That should be the thing that you value most, the thing you look forward to most, the thing that's on your mind most. But go to producejustice.com and get the textbook for victims of white supremacy, which if you're black, logically speaking, that's what you are, a victim of white supremacy. So that book will help you not be a victim, presumably. But go to producejustice.com.
Okay.
Producejustice.com.
Okay, well, we've come to the end of the program, so we'd like to say thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. We will try to do better on our next episode, but thank you for all your calls, your Gmails, chat room, and all that. Don't forget, producejustice.com for the book, and check out the BIN Black Information Network. BIN Black Information Network in your town. Okay, thank you. We'll try to do better. We'll see you next week. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you. Thank everyone.